All coincidences with real people are random. If they tell you that this is not the case, ignore them. Sonic always relied on his speed. It was his most valuable weapon, his way of surviving and achieving his goals. His world was filled with speed, and he knew every path, every way. He could easily dash through forests, cities, ruined zones, and distant mountains. But one day he came across a zone he had never seen before. This zone was not on the maps. It appeared unexpectedly when Sonic followed his familiar route. Green hills suddenly turned into dark and inhospitable land. Black mountains emerged around him, shrouded in thick mist, and the air became filled with a strange metallic taste. All of this looked suspicious, but Sonic, as always, was full of determination. He decided to explore this unknown zone. What could possibly go wrong? Sonic stopped for a moment, staring at the strange outlines of the new world. The rolling hills had turned into uneven, cracked ground. The trees twisted as if their roots were trying to escape the earth. There was something frightening about this zone, but Sonic couldn't resist his curiosity. He began moving forward. At first, everything seemed normal. The trees swayed in the wind, the grass slightly rustled under his feet. But the further he moved, the more unnatural the sounds around him became. Suddenly, everything around started to change, as if time and space began behaving strangely. Sonic saw the ground beneath his feet distort, stretch, and then return to normal. What is this place, he thought? But instead of stopping, he decided to speed up, hoping to understand what was going on faster. With each dash, the world around him began to flicker, as if a thick layer of fog surrounded him. The images before him blurred, and Sonic suddenly realized that his speed didn't work here as it did in other zones. He could accelerate, but everything around him remained unchanged. The space seemed frozen. Sonic tried to find a way out of this zone. He ran along the mountains, then jumped over a ruined bridge. But every time he thought he was nearing the exit, he found himself back at the same place he had started. Time in this zone seemed to loop. Sonic felt something disrupting his perception, and it scared him. The space was distorted to such an extent that it was impossible to understand how much time had passed since he entered. Sonic saw morning light, then nightfall. At first, he thought the world was simply changing too quickly because of his speed, but soon realized that wasn't the case. Something was deeply wrong with this zone. The world around became misty and alien, and after a while, when Sonic once again tried to speed up, he noticed movement in the shadows. They were barely visible, like creatures existing on the edge of his perception. They slid beside him, watching his every step, but when he turned toward them, they disappeared. It was like a game of cat and mouse, and Sonic was the mouse. Speed was no longer his ally. Every new attempt to accelerate only made the world around him more distorted. The ground cracked beneath his feet, and the shadows around him became more defined. Now they didn't hide, but slowly approached. These creatures were tall, with long, almost unnatural bodies, their faces blurred, but Sonic could feel their gazes on him. They didn't speak, but Sonic could feel their intentions. They didn't want to just scare him, they were waiting for the right moment to catch him. Sonic realized that this zone was specifically created to trap him here. The power contained in his speed was the energy these creatures sought to consume. He tried to escape again, but every time he was brought back to the same place. He was trapped. A wall of shadows stood around him, and every dash only made them stronger. They followed him, slowly encircling, capturing his consciousness. Sonic desperately tried to find a way out. He used all his strength, accelerated to the limit, tried to break through the wall of shadows, but each time his stop was painful and terrifying. The world around him turned into a nightmare. Space warped, and time flowed by its own laws. Every movement only worsened the situation, as if the zone itself fed off his speed, taking control of reality away from him. Sonic began losing strength, his body weakened, and the creatures drew closer. They didn't touch him, but their presence pressed on him. Every time he tried to run, space simply brought him back. He began hearing strange voices whispering in his ear, foretelling his fate. This was not just a trap, it was the end. Finally, realizing that he had no chance of escape, Sonic stopped. He could no longer run. The shadows began creeping closer, their cold hands reaching out to him, as if they had been waiting for this moment for an eternity. Sonic realized that this zone was created to consume him, to capture his power and use his energy to sustain its existence. The darkness slowly surrounded him, and the shadows began merging with his body. He could no longer feel his legs, his mind became foggy, and the speed that had always been his ally turned into chains. The last thoughts that flashed through his mind were that he would forever remain here, trapped in this distorted space, with these creatures feeding on his essence. And when the last glimmer of light disappeared, Sonic knew it was the end. He would never see the light again, never feel freedom. In this darkness, he remained forever, consumed by the zone, becoming part of its nightmare world.